Okay, we're broadcasting now on the Greening Government Webinar Speaker Series. My name is Ted Ritzer. I'm the host of the series. And just the way this series works, we have speakers who present for about 40 minutes, and then we have a Q&A for the remaining 20 minutes of the hour. Today, I'm joined by Terry Godwaldt, who is the founder of the Global Center for Education. And it's really interesting with this presentation because just reading a little bit of a description of what Terry and the Global Center for Education has achieved. Since 2006, over 150,000 students from over 400 schools in 30 different countries have participated in over 350 different conferences, making the Global Center for Education the largest provider of real-time high school collaborative programming in Canada. And an existing session that I think Terry's working overtime, literally, is it's called Tread Lightly, live from the United Nations Conference on Climate Change in Paris. And Terry, before you start, maybe chat with us a little bit about the Global Center for Education and what the heck you guys are doing, taking the delegation to Paris. I'll turn it over to Terry.
Oh, thanks, Ted, and thanks for this amazing initiative, and you and your team's vision for helping government to see how things can be done a little bit differently, and bringing in experts from across the planet to share some of those expertise. Education is part of government. And essentially, as Ted said, that we have our numbers are actually have grown significantly from there. Where this past year, we're actually academic year, we had over 100,000 kids alone in 1 year in 30 different countries who came on board. But what we're doing, and specifically in the context of your question of taking kids, we have a delegation of 14 countries that are going to be going to the United Nations Conference of Parties, or COP21 in Paris, and they're going to be sharing research that they have worked on for 25,000 hours over 3 months, and presenting the world's largest synthesis of youth opinion on climate change. And it's all actually organized right in the province of Alberta.
Oh, that's amazing, Terry.
Yeah, thanks. We feel pretty passionately about it, and we believe intensely that education and the role of the education sector is to empower students, not to just get a bunch of base skills that they are going to need to go to university or college or the workforce, which maybe sometime later in their life they can do something of consequence. But we believe with technology like this and other collaborative online technologies that we can link students together to take their learning and put it into some powerful action on this planet. And yeah, that's really what's happening in the context of Paris, and what we're doing here in the province. Great. So Ted, you want me to just jump right into the into the presentation then? Excellent. I see you got your mute button on, so I'll just take it from here. A good hello, ladies and gentlemen. I was going to say good afternoon, but I don't know when you're exactly watching this, so it could be good morning, it could be good afternoon, it could be good evening. But my name is Terry Godwaldt, and as Ted said, I'm the Director of Programming for the Center for Global Education. And I'm going to talk a little bit about our Taking Alberta Global initiative. And to those of you who are on Twitter, there's some Twitter handles for you. The first is my personal Twitter handle. The second is the Twitter handle for the Center for Global Education. And the third is the Twitter handle of a partner of ours called Taking It Global, who's fundamental to all the work that we do. And we would not be able to make the connections, we would not be able to have the tools that we have if it wasn't for the vision of the team there at Taking It Global. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we live in a world where classrooms aren't getting any busier, aren't getting any less busy. When people who are trying to get into classrooms aren't becoming any less, and then the children who are there don't seem to be becoming any fewer. And so in the midst of all of that, we're trying to introduce a new tool into teachers' toolboxes such that they would be able to make their learning more authentic for the children that are there. And in spite of the busyness of the classrooms, we believe that that we actually have a mandate to take students who, for the most part, feel on the outside, looking into the system. And it's not just our students, right? It goes all the way up into our young adults who are feeling disenfranchised. We look at election rates, and we see them on a steady decline. Fortunately, in Alberta, the last election we saw the youth participate, and some of our marginalized communities participate in both provincial and federal elections to a degree that we haven't seen for many years. But I think for the most part, we have the unemployment rates of youth. The economic situation that we're in is that we do have youth feel that they're looking on the outside in. And when I talk about youth, I mean more than just the 13 to 17-year-olds. I actually mean a broader bracket, looking at our youth up to 13, maybe to 30 years old, more of a European framework of youth. And I believe one of the reasons for this is that we have trained them for 13 years of their education to consume information, right? If we want to green our government, if we want to green our economies, if we want to move into this, we have to move individuals beyond consumption and to see themselves as producers, as co-producers. And that we see this result of kids sitting back in schools and watching and listening, and we see what this has done to our engagement rates. We see what this has done to our high school dropout rates. This is a pretty scary statistic, right? Where we're looking at almost half of the students who dropped out said they were dropped out because they were bored or they were not interested. And 90% of these kids were passing students. And I would say that, ladies and gentlemen, when you are living in a planet in which you feel on the outside looking in, systems on the outside looking in, a world that you feel that you look at, you hear about global warming, you hear about the ozone, you hear about rising sea levels, you hear about climate change, and we have youth who are coming through this system without hope. And I think that results in dropout rates. I also feel that results in consumption behaviors that are not good for them or for our planet. And what we know and what studies have shown us is that when we can, in education, make those meaningful links to where students see themselves as part of the solution, where students look at the world that they are going to inherit and they see themselves there. Right? They see the education that they're in the process of receiving as being relevant to the world that they're in. And part of that, we believe, is that global connection. And we know when it comes to the environment, we're not going to solve any of our issues if we have individuals who are looking at what's the self-interest of my town? What's the self-interest of my city, of my province, of my nation? Right? The only way we're going to come through these to the solutions we need to on this planet is by looking global. And I think that Alberta has a very strong history of looking global, and Alberta has a very strong history of being a leader. I think there's possibly in the past been a little bit of rhetoric behind some of that proposed leadership, but I believe that we very much do have the potential to be leaders. And in the context of education, I think we very much are that already. So where did this center come about? Because it's going to impact a little bit about how we what we're talking about in terms of greening and going global. The center was basically, I was a classroom teacher for 12 years. And I wanted to connect my classroom to deal with some of these world challenges that I saw out there. And I would write emails and I'd try to connect to them and people wouldn't answer my emails. So it was a little bit of, I don't know what it is, the Alberta entrepreneurial spirit. I said, okay, I am going to make up the Center for Global Education. I'm going to call myself its director. I created a website. I made a letterhead for my emails. And then I started sending them out, and lo and behold, all these people who wouldn't respond before are now getting back to me, and they want to work together, and we're able to do this. I'm the exact same person in the exact same classroom as before. And as Ted shared briefly, and as I shared at the beginning, we've now grown to the point now where we're one of the world's largest providers of real-time online synchronous learning. And where we'll link this past year, we had, as I said before, over 100,000 students who participated. investing thousands upon thousands upon thousands. I don't even know how many hours of collaboration that our students are working together. And basically the gist of it is that we believe that education without action is like food without exercise, right? If we are educating the future in such a position where they see themselves as consumers of information, right? And it doesn't matter how brilliant the education is, right? How wonderful the resources are that we're providing. If all kids are doing is sitting on the couch and eating even healthy food, they're going to get unhealthy. And I think the same could be said about our education systems, that we are education that does not lead towards action. In some ways is like we have these little ones who hear hear about climate change, who hear about pollution, who hear about those different issues, and it's like a wound that opens up in these little ones, right? And then, oh, well, sorry, Johnny, we have to go on to the next topic. Maybe you can go home and and also this is done. And then that wound that was open gets this callousness that grows over top of it, right? And then this callus grows and forms. And I do have someone else's microphone that's on right now at this. So if everyone's able to mute, we'll have a chance to unmute those microphones in a bit. Oh, great. Thanks for doing that. And then what will happen is they hear about climate change. They hear about action around the environment. And, well, we have to go on to the next topic. So what happens is a little scab forms over top of that wound. And then after 13 years of scabs forming, by the time they leave, we wonder why they're not engaged in democracy. We wonder why they're not engaged in civil society. Well, it's because we've trained them to sit back and watch. And what we believe through the center is that it is our responsibility in education to reach out and make that learning opportunity become an action opportunity. So here's a shot of our website, and feel free if I'm not interesting enough, you can check it out and take a look. Click on the events calendar. You'll see that yesterday we were actually in the Middle East. We were working with revolutionaries, talking about peace and violence for causing societal change. Today we were in Borneo, talking about deforestation and the leadership role that Canada Forestry is playing. Canada's forestry industry is playing with conservation and getting kids to look at different forestries. Tomorrow we're going to be working with child soldiers in Colombia. On Friday we're going to be connecting youth all the way from Brazil straight through to Churchill to talk about climate change and the UN upcoming conference that's there. So feel free to take a look that's there. Essentially what we will do through the center is to develop and to deliver virtual projects to engage and empower youth as agents of change through connecting them to the people and places they are learning about, right? So what does that mean? Well, the principal method we use is video conferencing, where we want to connect the students to the individuals. Tomorrow we're working with former child soldiers to show them that, you know what, it's more than just a video. This isn't just a commercial you can switch. You're actually going to talk to someone who's going to share their life story, right? Share the fact that potentially there's another side to what we hear, and that maybe the media that we have, maybe the information that we're being fed is not always the best information. And if we have a chance to hear it from the other side, a perfect example would be, we are working with, I'm going to talk about the COP21 project in a second, but we were bringing students in Ghana together with students in Canada to talk about to build a collaborative strategy for the message they're going to share together in Paris. As part of the Canadian delegation, we had students up in Churchill who were there, right? And everyone has heard of the importance of greening energy, which we all know is very important. But the kids in Churchill had a little bit of a different side to share about this. In Churchill, the river has been dammed, which is providing green energy. But one of the sides of it that hasn't been thought about, another side to the story, is the fact that because of this dam, the traditional lifestyle of the Cree, the Dene, and the Inuit who are in Churchill in terms of fishing in the Churchill River is no longer possible. Because of the dam that was put up there, their traditional lifestyle is not, they're not able to have that traditional lifestyle anymore. So it's a side that we don't necessarily always think about. What is the impact of the choices that we're making, and is there another side to the story than what we hear? Here's an example of the partners that we're working with. We're working the biggest players in the world, whether it's Cisco for video conferencing. We're working with the United Nations, UNESCO, all the way down to municipal governments like the city of Edmonton, and a whole myriad of other groups kind of all the way in between in order to make these events take place. So whether we're looking at working with child soldiers, that's the picture of the World Press Freedom event that we hold with, last year we were in South Africa. Last year we were in Lima working with the COP20 there, looking at climate change through a number of different climate justice events that we hold in collaboration with different groups. We believe that we have an opportunity to make those real connections. So how does it actually work? And then I'm going to get into, I'll talk about there's two different models of programs that we run. One of them is the Global Encounter. So this is a 3 to 5 day type of classroom event. And the other one I'm going to talk about is a virtual town hall. And this is a 1 month to 3 month event that goes on. And the gist of both of these connections is that we want students to make real connections to the people who are experiencing the world's greatest challenges. We want them to collaborate as a global community and work towards a solution. Now, that's pretty well what we're doing when we get together in Paris. That's pretty well what we do when we want to solve any problem here in Canada. We get our premiers together. It's pretty well what we do when we want to solve any significant problem, is we need to see it as part of a system. We need to see it as part of a larger group of people who want to make an impact. And so we have the two models. I'll share our two models that we use. And Ted, I'm not exactly sure the format. I apologize, I should have clarified it earlier. But if people want to pop up and ask questions, is it all right? I'm okay for kind of stopping at certain points that I can address questions that people might have brought online to date. What are your thoughts about that, Ted?
Well, I've got the Q&A panel open, Terry. So if people want to start posting questions through the Q&A function, they just have to hover their mouse or cursor over the top of the screen, and we can start monitoring that. Okay.
Brilliant. Yeah. So if you have questions, again, as we go along, ladies and gentlemen, I'd love to be able to address those and talk about some of the work that we're doing and kind of how it works. So a global encounter. This is a 3 to 5 day kind of event where schools will look at work. What happened was there's a lot of groups out there creating resources for schools. And I'm going to look at this one specifically in the context of the United Nations Climate Change Conference work that we do. And they create these massive documents which schools can't use because schools only have 3 to 5 days for a topic to actually address it before they have to go on to the next one. So what a global encounter is we have a series of activities that are on a content-rich virtual classroom, right? So this is, I'll show you an example of what it looks like in a second. Basically like a Facebook/website where you can post ideas, get to know people, and collaborate. On that one, we have a series of mentors. So if we're talking about the Climate Change Conference, we bring on a series of graduate students from different universities around North America with a special emphasis. We work with the University of Alberta, the Faculty of Graduate Studies and Research, Dr. Renee Poldzine, who is a visionary for outreach. She recruits different graduate students who actually mentor the students online. Right, so students are posting their ideas on this virtual classroom, and then graduate students are there giving them feedback, right? And then everything culminates in an international video conference where they meet face-to-face, kind of like how we're doing now, and they share their ideas, listen to experts. But the big difference is, rather than in this conference, I'm just talking, right? So you poor souls have to listen to me. In our conferences, our experts actually provide feedback for students. We found that young people, however interesting we may find ourselves to be, young people don't always find us as interesting as we think we are. And so what we do is we actually have kids do research. They get together and they share their research. And then our experts provide them with feedback. And we find that by doing it this way, our experts actually get to give their whole talks anyways. But they're doing it kind of they call it a flipped classroom. kind of atmosphere. Okay, so here we go. So Tread Lightly is the virtual class, is what we call the one that's live from COP. Here's an example of the kind of the social network component of it, right? Where we want students across the planet to to get to know each other. And Classroom isn't all about the teacher. It's actually about conversations that take place between students and desks as well. So we want to give them the opportunity to do that by releasing their bios, saying things, what do you like, what do you not like, all that kind of stuff. So here's my bio. Then you'll see there's a map where we have everybody in the planet who's connected. You can kind of see where they're connecting from. And then, so that virtual classroom is launched about 2 weeks before an event. So for COP21, we have the events are November 30th and December 10th. Hopefully for our December 10th, the premier will actually be there. Cross our fingers. We'll see. But she has many busy things on her plate. But on November 30th, we have a youth delegation who will be in Paris, who are going to be connecting back. And then we have another delegation who's in Paris on December 10th. So 2 weeks before, training for teachers, so they get step-by-step instruction how to make that work. And then they go online. So this is an example of the blogs that the students would create. Right? And they would be able to have this, and then you'll see Philip afterwards, who is a graduate student from the U of A, provides them with feedback. Hey, that's a good idea. This is cool. Take a look at this resource. These are my thoughts on that. And other kids comment as you go down. And so you have this atmosphere, because remember, our kids are the keynotes, right? Our kids are the ones who are going to be sharing. They have to refine their ideas. And we know as good sound education research is that students are engaged when they're doing something real. And this is real, right? You're going to share your opinions with the delegation who's on the ground. And that you can see the engagement level that we have is significant. This is what it would look like in an actual video conference. You see all the sites around the outside. And the kids have refined their viewpoints. And I'll tell you one story from this specific event. It wasn't this year, it was a couple years ago, but we were connecting with a school in Nicaragua, right? And the Canadians were talking about the oil sands and they're concerned about the oil sands and all that jazz. And just so everybody, you probably all know this, but most of the world's never heard of the oil sands. Right, outside of like the people who will go to the COP21, they'll have heard of the oil sands and they know about Canada's bad reputation, but most of the world still doesn't know. I have only connected with one other school that has ever heard of the Canadian oil sands. So we were connecting to the school in Nicaragua, and the kids were all shocked, right? Because no one has heard of the oil sands. And like, what do you mean no one's heard of the oil sands, right? Everybody's heard of the oil sands. And then the Nicaraguans' response to the Canadians was, why does Canada think they're so important? And the Nicaraguans, I mean, you can't teach that to kids, right? I wish I could have those moments for my children. Listen, you're not the center of the universe, although you may think you are. But that's something we can't teach, right? But that's something that having this global connection where kids start to see where they fit and also start to understand how if we're going to make any changes on this planet, what's the scale we need to think about us working for? And I have 2 more slides and I'm going to take a break. If you have questions about this one, we actually run these events for the RCMP. We run these events for the Canada Council. We run these events for UNESCO. We run these events for Polar Bears International. We run these events for the Red Cross. We run these events for cities, for a whole government ministries, where they want 3 to 5 days of classroom instruction. So you'll see there's actually only 3 activities that the students do in their class, right? Whatever ministry, you may create this fabulous resource with like 50 different activities for students to do. That's like 85 pages long. Just so you know, that's not getting into any classrooms. That's like getting to the staff room or to the photocopy room, and it's going to make a very short trip to the recycle bin. So having something that's relevant to classrooms, it's manageable to classrooms in light of the curriculum restraints that they have is really important. And that's what we do. I mean, I'm actually connecting here from Queen Elizabeth High School. The center is located in a school district. Anyways, so here we go. So we have the timeline is from the 20th until the 30th, there's 2 online activities that the students do. And then they present these activities live to Paris on the 30th of November. And then they have one more activity And then they're going to present that. And they're, again, this whole time they're collaborating with mentors online. Graduate students are providing them with feedback. Kids are collaborating with each other, refining their ideas, making them better. And then we go live the last time on December 10th, where we go live from Paris. So this is the, that's the model, the global encounter model. That's meant, our vision is that this will be in every single classroom in Alberta. We know that this is a model that works. It works in elementary, it works in junior high, and it works in high school. We want to see it everywhere. So are there any questions you guys have for me about global encounters? Ted, has anything come across the line? Otherwise, I'll hop right into what we're doing this year for COP. Well, that is for COP 21, but I'll talk about our virtual town halls.
Yep, no questions have come through yet, Terry.
All right, sounds good. Good. Okay, so the second part of what we do, as I want to talk about, is the virtual town halls. So I have 4 examples of virtual town halls that we have run. We ran a national one last year for COP 20. We had youth from across Canada work together. We worked with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and shared an Alberta youth's perspective to the TRC. The kids actually presented it to the Premier, to the RCMP Commissioner, to the Aboriginal Affairs Minister, the Canadian, the former Aboriginal Affairs Minister. He is now no longer sitting in his seat. Anyways, we were commissioned by the Federation of Canadian Municipalities to write a paper on their vision for, oh, that one's not in here, but we were commissioned to write a paper on, oh, no, it is there. So Our Communities is there. And the students presented this paper to the mayors of Canada. And we were here. Another example of a paper is where we presented last year at the Congress. It's an academic conference in Ottawa on what their vision for global citizenship should be on the planet moving forward in light of the United Nations new to fill the place of the Millennium Development Goals. They have the Sustainable Development Goals, and global citizenship is a component of that. So, so in light of,
So just to interrupt quickly with a question, Terry, Sarah Brewer has asked, what does COP stand for, and what do the numbers represent?
Okay, great question. So COP stands for Conference of Parties, and this is the United Nations climate change conferences that they run. They run multiple conferences, but these are the ones where a lot of the negotiations are kind of formally announced at those conferences, and they have a significant, the largest civil society participation rates that are out there. So this is what's coming up in Paris. And it's last year was in Peru. The year before that, I believe it was in Poland, in Warsaw. And the numbers have to do with what number in the sequence it is. So this is the 21st Conference of Parties that's taking place this year in Paris. Yeah, and so that's what. So last year was 20. This year is 21. So let's talk a little bit about what exactly this paper is that we are bringing forward. So other virtual town halls we're running this year. UNESCO has commissioned us to, we have a parallel group that's, that we are going on global citizenship. We actually have, this is a really, really exciting project that we have on the go with, oh goodness, the ACE, Alberta Council for Environmental Educators, and Gareth Thompson and his vision. This is really exciting, where we're actually looking at how schooling, this isn't just government policy, but we want to look at how do schools need to change in an era of climate change. And this is going to take place in the spring. So we're looking at phys ed class. What does phys ed class look like in an era of climate change? What does health class look like in an era of climate change? What does our cafeteria look like in an era of climate change? So really exciting opportunity to bring students across the province together to look at this. And the goal of the virtual town halls is to empower the next generation of active and informed citizens today, right? we want to make sure that our students realize that if you want to impact change, yes, you can string a banner across a high rise. That's going to impact change. Yes, you can shout from a corner on the street. But if you really want to be a part of the process, you need to become informed, right? You need to collaborate. You need to bring together multiple voices. And then you need to engage in the system. And that's what this process is. So let's take a look. So for this year in Paris, we have 10,000 youth. Every continent minus the South Africa, minus the Antarctica is going to be represented. 25 global NGOs and partners. 3 months of collaboration. And all, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have 25,000 hours of online collaboration. It's going to be the world's largest synthesis of youth opinion on climate change. And at the end of this process, the kids are going to take all of this together and they're going to go to Paris. We have a delegation that in order for the students to go, they actually have to have a carbon mitigation plan in place as well. Because as you hear, we're going to have 20 delegates who are going to be presenting this paper in Paris. Everybody has to have a carbon neutral plan in order to go to mitigate it over the course of the year, whatever, that's a side note. But and they're going to be presenting it to the leaders of the planet and leaders of NGOs and leaders of civil society who are going to be there. So we're very excited to and we're actually in conversation with Alberta Education to see if there's other ways, the Alberta government, to see if there are ways that we can further integrate this into the delegation that's going, and hopefully that will work out. We have, the gist of it is that we believe that through a model of training, collaborating, mentoring, and then working towards a final product, that's where we can have that kind of an impact. These kids I'll talk about the structure in a second. I don't want to get ahead of myself. But and then once we have that final product actually loops back into the system, because that final product will influence behavior. And these kids who are coming back, who are a part of this process, and Alberta is leading this for the entire planet, right here in Edmonton. These kids, youth, are going to be working, would like to sit down with Alberta Education and say, listen, we've created this resource. We believe that kids and other students in Alberta should see this. We believe the students want to work with the different branches of government to implement these very comprehensive documents that they have created back into the system. So they want to work towards action. And then once this is done, we're working towards, well, what's the next stage of implementation? What's the next stage of integration in order to make this real? So this is the model for the climate. Look at this. I brought up the wrong model. I'll talk about this. I have to transpose the dates. This is actually for the one on schools and climate change. But the one that we're in right now for the COP process, basically schools have been were selected over the course of about a year leading up to this event. Student leadership training started in September. And then from September, it's going straight through until November. September 25th was when it started. The collaboration and training ends on November 13th at 7:30 in the morning. If anybody wants to come on out to Queenie, we're going to bring the planet together. You can come and see that, or Lillian Osborne School in Edmonton are the two. The virtual town hall, the global virtual town hall, is actually taking place on November 13th. After that, the students go away, and we're going to bring the whole planet together to synthesize these ideas. And then they present this they present this in Paris in November, at the end of November, December. And then they continue to promote the paper after this, right? They don't want this paper to die. They've invested an incredible amount of time into making it happen, and they want to see it implemented. So I see, Ted, that we have another question. Okay. So, you know what? We're literally right at the end in terms of this piece here, so I can jump in on that one, and I'll let Ted maybe moderate that. Sorry. These are all the tools that the kids are using in terms of collaboration to make it happen. Ladies and gentlemen, we believe that we're at a crossroads. We believe that we're at a crossroads, that the opportunity for our students to get together with experts in the field, with technology that makes this every day, and with a mandate in curriculum. My vision, and this is a little bit towards Maurice's question, and then I'll let Ted direct it a little bit, but our vision is that there isn't a policy that comes out of government, a major policy that youth haven't been a part of this process for. You know what? It's all there in the curriculum. And the Environment and Sustainable Resource Development commissioned us 2 years ago to write a paper on water conservation. So we had city kids looking at irrigation systems. We had kids in the prairies looking at urban water usage. We had both of them looking at oil and gas, upstream oil and gas. As they had both of them looking at the complex water usage here in our province. And we know that students want to be a part of it. There's room in the curriculum and there's opportunities to engage. And we want to help facilitate that dialogue for the youth of Alberta. The opportunities to bring the classroom into the world and the world into our classroom are here. One last, I want to share this one, then I'm going to open it up for a round of questions. I've been talking for like 35 minutes. That's a long time. I wonder, this is by the foundation of Jennifer Corriero. She's the co-founder of Taking It Global. She says, I wonder if young people were actively engaged in all aspects of society and government and thought of themselves as community leaders, problem solvers, role models, mentors, and key stakeholders, how would the world change? Ladies and gentlemen, I propose to you that if we can empower not just young people in university or college, not just young people in clubs or after school, but young people in the classroom to see themselves as community leaders. They're looking at problems. Why don't we give them an authentic audience to look at those problems with, right? Why don't we connect them with mentors in government who are looking at these issues as they publish their ideas and work on them, right? Why don't we get them to see themselves as key stakeholders now, right? When they're 14, when they're 16, when they're 18, when they're 25, when they're 12, when they're 10. Get them to see themselves as key stakeholders now. Because when they leave us, when they leave our schools, they will see themselves as key stakeholders, as role models, as mentors, as problem solvers, as community leaders. And we will have a legion of young people who are not wondering if they can participate, but are looking for opportunities when they can participate. Our vision through the center is that every youth will walk into a class and will say, I wonder if we're going to connect to the other side of the world. I wonder if we're actually going to do something real. But they're going to walk into a class and they're not going to wonder if, they're going to wonder when.
Okay. So we've got
go ahead.
That was wonderful, Terry. We've got a number of questions. I'll start with, I'll just take them in order. I think summarizing Maurice's question, summarizing it would be how might we, and we meaning government, join the 21st century collaboration world, just like your students, Terry?
Oh, interesting. Okay, so Maurice, are you saying that how can, no, you're not saying how can the government work with students, but you're actually saying how can the government itself foster that same type of collaborative problem-solving model as what we're doing in the schools? Is that what you're saying, Maurice?
I think that's what Maurice means, and I guess I would further add to that. In my experience of participating in two different massive open online collaboration projects, yep. One with Coursera and one with MIT, I would have to say, Terry, that you're more than walking the talk in terms of what MIT and Coursera is doing, in that I would almost call this action at internet scale. And the number of people, students that you've involved is something that I think that's what Maurice's question is leading to, is how can government sort of involve people at internet scale like you are demonstrating with youth?
Well, here's one of the challenges is, and this is everything we do is public. Students know that what they're going to share is going to be heard, right? Now I need to qualify that. In the formation process, everything is in a secure classroom where no one else can read it except for the students. But that's for security reasons, right? But when this document is published, we were commissioned by Alberta Energy to produce a paper on the oil sands. I have to admit, the government at the time that commissioned it wasn't what they were hoping would come. But we don't filter it. When the kids come in to write this, we tell the kids, listen, you don't represent yourself anymore. It doesn't matter what your opinion is. Your job is to synthesize what we have done here. So at the very beginning, students know that their ideas is going to get out. Now, is government ready to have the ideas get out? That's a question. That's a tough one. It's a tough question, and I can understand why government might not want to do that. But that's not something the students know that's not an option on our side. And so in terms of the process that we use, everything we do, every tool we use is free. Our idea is that we're going to facilitate it first, and we want these youth to go out and see themselves as facilitating it locally, or even on a grand scale as well later on. So I think the two things is that if we're going to say we're going to make it public, then we need to make it public, and you need to be ready for the results of that. And is government ready for that? And secondly, we need to make sure that we have the entire spectrum of opinion that's being shared so that we have balance. And these can be dissenting voices as well. So there's challenges in that kind of a democratic model of doing things. It doesn't always work in an organization, but I'll tell you, it would be exciting to see what could come from that, because there are so many brilliant public service workers that if we could find ways of harvesting those opinions, I think the government would be stronger because of it.
Maybe I'll go to the next question, Terry, that came in sequence. I see that your platform is effective for outreach, but how do you get the intended audience involved? And have you found the strength of the internet connection in rural settings a severe impediment to these live conferences? So, two-part question.
We are so lucky to live in Alberta. I know that there was a lot of people who were opposed to the government spending the money they did on the Supernet and the like, but I'll tell you, our connections, I was actually connecting to a rural, if you have good internet, it doesn't matter where we were connecting to good internet in Ghana, and it was amazing. We were connecting to bad internet in Newfoundland, and it sucked, right? We could hear the people in Ghana and communicate with them, the people in Newfoundland, we couldn't. All of our schools in Alberta have great internet, so that is never an impediment. They have access to all these tools. We have schools in small communities, in First Nations communities, in small High Prairie is a great example, where these kids are doing work that big city kids should be and school boards should be salivating over, because they don't have to. Place doesn't really matter anymore, and yeah, so that's there. And there was a first question that I think I may have missed it, but.
Well, I think you answered the second part of the question in terms of Alberta being fortunate to have the kind of bandwidth and the type of internet compatible network across the province, which I think has helped rural Alberta with high-speed internet. So I don't think we are necessarily the same as some other jurisdictions that don't have that infrastructure. So the next question in sequence here is, and it happens to be about our department. So,
good.
Yes. So could you, how can environment and parks help advance the student paper after Paris? And then how can we host more Zoom collaboration with the students with climate change managers to create the necessary dialogues? It doesn't really matter about the technology, whether it's Zoom or whatever, but I think that it's an interesting question for our department to consider.
Oh, I'll tell you, kids want to share. Kids will want to meet with you on the work. They have a huge sense of ownership. And so for them to meet and to share the results that they've created, I'll tell you, if the department wants to create a similar provincial version of this, we would love to work with you. We have small First Nations communities in southern Alberta, the Kenai, no, that's not it. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have started if I wasn't going to. So the blood of southern Alberta, in and around Pincher Creek, all the way to the far north, east. We're in every single region of the province. We would love to work with the ministry to facilitate a provincial version of a paper like this as a response to this one. So there's two options. We could do one right here in Alberta. Number two, the youth who created this paper are going to want to share it and would love and be honored to meet with the department to share with their findings.
Oh, that's excellent. So the next question in sequence, Terry, is from Karen Ritchie, and she's asked, just wondering, what does a typical project cost to run from planning right through to evaluation and the end of the project?
Well, it really depends, right? So for this, for our global projects, we have another paper we're going to be presenting next year in Beijing. We have some other papers that we're working on for different multinational groups. These ones are quite a bit more expensive. We're looking at between $25,000 to $35,000. We have a project manager, or we should have a project manager. We have an entire team of 5 or 6 people who work on it for a significant portion of a year. And then the facilitation is craziness. We have meetings at all time and day and night. With the provincial conferences, we run, because of the virtual nature of this, for between $6,000 to $8,000 is typical of what we would run on a provincial or a national basis to make these, to make the virtual town halls. And then, I mean, we have lots of cost structures that we could talk about, but I'm certainly be willing to share with you more detail on that if you like.
Yeah. Okay, well, another question here is, have you had an opportunity to present to elected officials like the one representing your ministry to different ministers? If so, what are their impressions and support? And it seems to me just recently you happened to tell me that you were meeting with an MLA. Is that correct?
Yeah, so it got put back. So on Monday, I'm actually meeting with MLA Nielsen, Chris Nielsen. We have met with the paper that we produced for the department, the Environment Sustainable Resource Development. Actually, the minister was kind enough to meet with the students. We actually don't produce big papers unless we have the appropriate audience. So we wouldn't do a provincial conference unless we had the Minister of Environment and Parks who was willing to receive the document. Or we had the equivalent in industry or something like that who would receive it. Because we haven't had extensive meetings with MLAs, to tell you the truth. We have a pretty small team who's running at breakneck speed 24/7, but we'd love to. We'd be honored to.
Yeah. Well, there's another interesting concept or idea for you to consider, and that's whether we could host the students actually presenting to us after the delegation has returned from Paris and presenting to Alberta Environment and Parks. That's the idea that's been posted.
That'd be awesome.
Okay, I'll just scroll down here and see if there's any more questions. Hello? Not quite sure what's happened here. Terry may have lost his connection for whatever reason. It's been a fascinating presentation. And we will post it to the Municipal Climate Change Action Center website. Yeah, it's just me right now, and thanks everybody. Looks like there's okay. I'll just see if there's more questions. Yeah, Heather asked, did we lose him? And for whatever reason, yes, I'm sorry, folks. We've lost Terry Godwaldt with the session, and he did his presentation, and we have responded to a number of questions. So thanks so much for joining us. It's been really fascinating to see the questions that are coming in. Now, the other thing is that I'd open up the floor to folks to pose more questions. if Terry cannot rejoin us, we can consider questions, and I'll pose them to him. Looks like Terry is. Are there any more questions before we end the presentation for today? I'll just give you a few more moments to post anything. Obviously, we did lose the connection with Terry. Okay, well, thanks so much for joining us, and stay tuned. Next week, we will have another presentation, a webinar, and the topic is, where are we here? I'll have to check. John Richardson, CEO of Othello, and the topic is Green Collaboration for the Wisdom of the Crowd. Thanks so much for joining us, and tune in next Thursday after Remembrance Day. Thanks so much.